This is Idiot with a Library Card, and on this episode, I'm going to be talking about the 1955 Ian Fleming novel Moonraker, which is the third entry of Fleming's world-famous James Bond series. I am also going to be talking about the 1981 film of the same name. Other than the name, Moonraker, and a few small details, the novel and the movie could not be more different. The novel is a really cool Bond story with an interesting bad guy and a fun twisty plot. The movie is a really stupid story that was only made because Star Wars was a big hit a few years earlier. Before I go any further, there will be a few spoilers for both the book and the movie. I will say that the book is worth a read. It's really great. The movie is, as I said, incredibly stupid. I personally hated it. But it is worth a watch. Because at times it rides that line of so bad it's good. Actually, if you watch this movie, I think you should watch a few other James Bond movies. If you're familiar with like the Daniel Craig James Bond movies, and then you watch Moonraker, it's such a shock. It will literally give you whiplash. Like, watch Skyfall and then pop in Moonraker, and you don't even recognize the two characters, or it's amazing that these two films exist in the same film series. So I think it's obvious that I don't really like the Roger Moore movie, but I love the book. And I don't know what they are going to do with the Bond movie franchise going forward, but I know what I want them to do. I would really like them to go back to more basic movies and kind of pull more of the stories from the original novels, because the original novels are actually a lot of fun and really well written, and the movies have gotten a little too serious for my liking. And I just think Bond works better in the Cold War era, in the early 50s and 60s, and so I would like to see them actually turn these Bond movies into a more of a period piece of like the 50s and 60s Cold War spy games type stuff. Now there's a problem with that, in that you don't want the movies to look too much or act too much like the Sean Connery movies. Like, you want the studios to do something new as well, and making it a period piece, it would actually add to comparisons of the original Sean Connery, especially like the first three movies, which are really great. I think the series sort of has high tides and low tides, but early on, those first three movies, Dr. No, From Russia with Love, and Goldfinger, are excellent movies, and I would totally recommend them. Like, the Roger Moore iteration of James Bond really rides that line of ridiculous. It really is more of a ridiculous kind of construct, and the movies are much sillier. I think people may be under the impression that the novels are more like the early movies and don't have those heavy, hard-hitting scenes, and that the newer movies are more gritty than the novels are and have more of a real feeling. This is actually not true. Again, the movie Moonraker ends with a bunch of space marines attacking the bad guys' spaceships, and everyone suddenly has laser guns. So that's right, laser guns. And laser guns is a thing in this movie that for some reason is not some big discovery in warfare, and all the great armies are now using laser guns. No, just this movie, and only when they're in space. This doesn't happen in the book, actually. Nothing goes into space in Moonraker the novel. Not even the rocket. The title Moonraker, in the movie sense, is referring to the spaceships that the bad guy has. They're all Moonraker 1, Moonraker 2. The Moonraker in the novel is an ICBM, an intercontinental ballistic missile, which in 1955, when the book was written, was a huge deal, and they were things that were developing and ended up developing a few years later, and it made it possible to basically drop a nuke anywhere you want it in the world. As I was saying, the novels are more realistic and way more gritty, especially compared to those late 70s, early 80s movies. The chair scene with the knotted rope in Casino Royale, that scene's taken directly from the book. A few little things are changed, but he sat in a chair with no bottom, and hit in his jewels with, I believe it's not a knotted rope. It's some sort of bat thing. But either way, it basically is the same effect. And it happens in the novel. I was pretty surprised when I was reading that. So what I'm saying is I would love to see whatever studio has the James Bond rights to take another shot at Moonraker. The novel is great. I will say that the novel does lack some key aspects of the Bond series. For one thing, it only takes place in England. There's no globe hopping or exotic locations for Bond to go to. Really only two places, London and the English countryside is where this novel takes place. It also has a bit of a simpler story than most of the movies, as there's no, secret organization. Basically, it's the bad guy, he has a plan needs to be stopped, or millions of people are going to die. So what makes it a great Bond novel? First, there is a scene in which Bond catches the bad guy cheating at cards, but it's done in such an interesting way. Drax, and I don't think it's a spoiler to say, he's the bad guy in the story. He's kind of like an Elon Musk character if Elon Musk was also a war hero. So he is part of the same club that M is. M is Bond's boss, if you don't know. And there's some suspicion that Drax is cheating at cards, and the manager of the club is afraid to call him out because he's basically like a national treasure. It would be a bad look for the club that he's a part of, and for Drax. So M invites Bond to the club, knowing that Bond's a really good card player, to actually prove that Drax is in fact cheating. And if he could find out how and maybe figure out a way to fix the issue. So Bond goes to the club, and the game that he's cheating at is bridge. And Bond figures out that he's cheating and how he's cheating. So Bond, instead of calling him out, figures out that he can cheat as well, and he has a better way to basically flip Drax's cheating on its head and use it to his advantage. And this really bails everyone out because, again, if the club got word that he was cheating, they'd have to kick him out, and that would get all over the British press as, again, this Drax character is a very important figure. He's developing a rocket for the British government. He's like a self-made billionaire. He's just admired by everyone, and he's doing things to help the country. So it would be better if this didn't get out in the news. And I will say, of course, Bond's little game works, and they get Drax and they catch him in cheating, and he wins a bunch of money from Drax. And the card game's pretty suspenseful, especially for a game of bridge. It's really exciting, and it's something that Ian Fleming excels at, is writing exciting card games. In a bunch of the James Bond novels, there's card games going on, and Ian Fleming really knows how to write them suspensefully. A few days after the game, there's a murder that's committed at the facility that Drax is building Moonraker. And this is bad because Moonraker is about to be test launched. And again, it's not some spaceship, it's an ICBM type missile. Also keep in mind, this is 1955, so as I said earlier, an ICBM is a huge deal. So James is called by M to go and investigate. This would not be a usual assignment for him. Bond thinks this is more in Scotland Yard's territory, which Scotland Yard also has someone investigating, which will come up later. But since it's of such national importance, and Bond really doesn't have a choice anyway, he goes to investigate. He goes undercover as a government official. Now, Drax already knows him, but Drax just thinks that he is a security expert and not a super spy. So that is the setup. And again, I don't think I'm spoiling anything, but Drax's plan is actually really interesting and kind of fun. The rest of the book is Bond and this female undercover agent who is working as Drax's personal assistant, doing a detective investigation and trying to figure out what's going on. So one scene I wanted to highlight is there's an action scene where Bond and the girl, and her name's Brand, are on a beach under a cliff. And above is Drax's rocket building facility. And they're starting to put things together, Bond and the girl. And all of a sudden, there's an explosion, and this explosion triggers an avalanche that sort of falls on their head. Bond and Brand get away. They're pretty banged up and hurt, but they survive it. What's cool about it is on the page, it happens so suddenly. And, you're along with Bond, and you're also trying to figure out what's going on. And all of a sudden, there's an explosion and an avalanche. And the way it's written, it really puts you in Bond's shoes, where this huge thing happens, but it happens so fast and it's so unexpected that you're a little confused as to what's going on. It's one of those things I had to stop and reread the page to make sure I didn't miss anything, as basically the world collapses on him. It's really cool. It's a really well written scene, and it's like a fun survival scene, which Bond usually has. Something happens, the bad guys sort of trap him, and he barely gets out with his life. And this is one of those scenes, but it happens so quick. It's neatly written, and I think Ian Fleming really excels at writing action, and this scene in particular is just really cool. It's a great scene. It's exciting, scary, and it gets kind of claustrophobic as they're sort of trapped in rocks. I just love the scene. It was really great. It was the first sort of physical action that happens, and it really pulls you into the book. So I really love that scene, and thought it was a neat thing that happened in the book. This book, and again, I have not read all the novels. This one feels like it's peak Bond. It's a great novel that, like so many great novels, are turned into terrible movies. First of all, I saw the movie before I read the book. I think one of the weird things about the book and the movie is the book is so tight and contained, and it's fun action, kind of a detective novel starring James Bond with a strong, capable female lead. The bad guy is cool because he is charming, and until very late in the novel, Bond really likes him and admires him. The way they spoil his plan and actually figure out what he's doing is also clever and well written. It reveals little pieces of the plan just at perfect times. Like most good detective novels, you're figuring it out along with the detective. And that's what happens here, is you start to figure out what's going on. It's just the breadcrumbs are left so perfectly. It's such a neat detective novel within this spy novel. And as I said, the movie, on the other hand, is stupid. The action's lame, and a lot of the fight scenes are played more for laughs. It's a bad James Bond movie to start, and then they go to space. And there are a bunch of spaceships shooting lasers at each other. It looks like a bad Roger Corman Star Wars ripoff, which he made multiple Star Wars ripoffs. It's so bad that it is kind of fun to watch. That's the only redeeming quality for it. I would say the James Bond novels are great. You should check them out. Moonraker is a good one to start with. The nice thing is, like the movies, you don't need to read them in order. And Moonraker is just a great intro to the series if you haven't read any of the novels. The movie's bad. But I would say, if you've only seen the new movies, it's so shocking that a movie like Skyfall and Moonraker are part of the same series. And it may be worth, if you're actually a Bond fan, especially later iterations like this Daniel Craig versions, it is really fun to see the contrast between this and a ridiculous movie like Moonraker that is also a James Bond scene. They were calling the new James Bond movie Bond 25 for a while before they had a title. Moonraker and Bond 25, I guess it's No Time to Die, are again in the same series, and it's so funny to me that these two movies are related to each other in any way. Thanks for listening. Please like, subscribe, and comment wherever you get your podcasts. And I hope to be getting out another show shortly, a bit more heady and philosophical, but only as philosophical as an idiot with a library card can get.